They call me Captain Rebel, though that rank feels like it belongs to someone else now, like a uniform hung in a closet gathering dust, while the man who wore it became something unrecognizable, and what I am preparing to share with you will shatter every comfortable assumption you hold about objects that traverse our skies, because for 8 long years I have carried a burden that has corroded my soul like some caustic chemical eating through steel. And during my time as a lieutenant serving the United States Army stationed at Nellis Air Force Base out in the Nevada wasteland, I bore witness to something the official record claims does not and cannot exist, and this experience opened my eyes to a horrifying reality that our government has been concealing from its citizens the true nature of technology it has possessed and exploited for the better part of 70 years. And before I proceed any further, you must grasp one fundamental truth about me. I am not suffering from delusions or paranoia. I am not some fringe theorist dwelling in a basement connecting dots on conspiracy boards with colored yarn. I am a highly decorated military officer with 15 years of distinguished service, including 2 combat deployments to Afghanistan and a personnel file without a single blemish, and I believed wholeheartedly in the chain of command. I executed orders without question. I maintained operational security when instructed to do so, but now as I watch my daughter navigate adolescence in a world constructed on carefully maintained falsehoods, I can no longer justify my silence. And when they transferred me to Nellis back in 2015, I interpreted it as recognition, perhaps even a reward after endless cycles of combat duty. I would oversee security operations for the Nevada Test and Training Range, which essentially meant ensuring unauthorized civilians stayed clear of restricted territories, easy-duty, decent compensation, close enough to Las Vegas to maintain some semblance of normal life. But what they neglected to mention during those initial assignment briefings was that certain areas carried restrictions far beyond standard classification, and that certain aircraft operating over that desolate expanse were never supposed to exist according to any official documentation. And the first 6 months unfolded exactly as I had anticipated: routine patrol circuits, inspecting perimeter barriers, occasionally intercepting some conspiracy enthusiast attempting to breach Area 51 boundaries armed with cameras. And the facility itself is absolutely massive, encompassing over 4,500 square miles of prohibited airspace and terrestrial zone, and the vast majority consists of barren desert landscape, but embedded within are sectors, zones nested inside zones where even base personnel require explicit authorization for access. And I did not possess that authorization, not initially at least, but then in March of 2016, everything transformed irrevocably when I received orders to report to Colonel Morrison's office at 0600 hours. And the expression on his secretary's face as I entered told me immediately this was no standard meeting, because Morrison sat behind his desk, flanked by 2 men wearing civilian attire, dark suits devoid of badges or identification marks or insignia, just that unmistakable governmental presence that screams intelligence, apparatus, and Lieutenant Hart. Morrison stated, his tone stripped of inflection and emotion, "You have been selected for specialized assignment. And these gentlemen represent a department that does not technically appear on any organizational chart, and they require qualified personnel for nocturnal security operations in Sector 19. And you have precisely 60 seconds to accept or decline this offer, and if you decline, this conversation will be erased from memory and your career proceeds normally. But if you accept, everything changes fundamentally. So what is your answer?" And 60 seconds is insufficient time for rational deliberation, barely enough to draw breath. And I studied those suited men and recognized something in their eyes that I had seen before in Afghanistan, that haunted look of individuals who have witnessed phenomena that destroy peaceful sleep. And whatever this assignment entailed, it was authentic, and somehow I knew my response before conscious thought formed the words, and I said, "I accept, sir," and Morrison nodded, as though my answer had been predetermined, and one of the suited figures opened a briefcase, extracting a tablet device. And he stated, "You will commence tonight at 2100 hours. Report to Gate 7 on the northwest perimeter boundary, and you will lead a 3-person team conducting observation patrols through the restricted zone, and your primary mission objective is preventing unauthorized personnel from entering, and your secondary objective is observing and documenting any anomalous aerial activity, and under absolutely no circumstances will you attempt to photograph, record, or interfere with anything you observe in the airspace above. Is that understood?" And I wanted desperately to ask what exactly we would be observing, but his phrasing made abundantly clear that questions would receive no answers, and I responded, "Clear, sir," and he transferred the tablet to me, stating, "Your team assignments and sector cartography, commit them to memory because the device will erase itself within 24 hours, and one additional matter, Lieutenant, you will be executing a non-disclosure agreement, unlike anything in your previous experience, and violating it means not only career termination, but your family members become subjects of national security interest, and they avoid making direct threats, instead selecting language so precise you comprehend exactly what they mean." And that night I arrived at Gate 7, and the location was isolated, far removed from the main installation, accessible only via an unmarked dirt road that appeared on no map I had studied, and two individuals were already present when I pulled up, and Sergeant Riley Cade, a sniper I had worked alongside briefly during my Afghanistan deployment, steady under extreme pressure, observant as hell, type who notices details everyone else overlooks, and Corporal Vega Torres, a communications and radar specialist, young, perhaps 25 years old, but incredibly sharp, and Sir Cade acknowledged as I approached, his eyes scanning the darkness beyond the gate perimeter. "Any idea what our mission is out here?" And I kept my voice neutral, stating, "Observation patrol through restricted zone. We monitor the sky, document anything unusual, and prevent civilian intrusion." And Torres glanced up from her equipment, asking, "Monitor the sky for what exactly?" And that was indeed the question, because I had reviewed the briefing materials, but they were intentionally ambiguous, stating Sector 19 was designated as a testing range for advanced aerospace platforms, and that was the extent of the information. No specifics regarding what those platforms were, or who constructed them, or why armed patrols were necessary. And I said, "For whatever they are testing out there, let us move." And we passed through Gate 7 into complete darkness. No illumination, no structures, just empty desert extending endlessly beneath a sky dense with stars. And our night vision equipment rendered everything in shades of green, but the terrain was so flat and without features it felt like walking on some alien world. And the silence pressed down on us, broken only by gravel crunching under our boots, and the distant moan of wind. And Sir Torres spoke quietly, checking her handheld radar unit. "I am detecting strange readings, intermittent contacts at extremely high altitude, but the signature does not match any known aircraft profile." And I said, "Explain," moving closer to examine her screen. And she said, "Whatever is up there is moving far too fast. We are talking Mach 6, possibly higher. And the radar cross-section keeps fluctuating, like the object is somehow changing its shape or absorbing the radar waves." And Cade had stopped walking, rifle lowered, but ready, and he said, "Sir, look at that." And I followed his gaze upward, and initially I saw nothing but stars, but then I noticed something wrong with the night sky section, perhaps 30 degrees wide, where the stars appeared dimmed as though something was blocking them, something massive and in motion. And I ordered, "Cut your night vision," and I removed my own goggles. And without the green amplification, the sky revealed its secret, and there, silhouetted against this stellar backdrop, was a shape that violated every law of physics, a perfect black triangle, perhaps 200 feet on each side, moving silently across the sky at impossible velocity. No engine sound, no contrails, no navigation lights, just this enormous dark shape that seemed to devour the starlight behind it. And Torres whispered, "Jesus Christ, what is that?" And the triangle moved with liquid grace, banking smoothly as it altered direction. And as it turned, I glimpsed something on its underside, 3 circular areas glowing faintly red, arranged in a triangular pattern at each corner. The craft was heading northeast toward the deeper sections of the restricted zone, and Sir Cade's voice remained steady, but I heard the edge beneath it. "That is not ours, is it?" And I did not answer, because I did not know, or perhaps I did know, and speaking it aloud would make it too real. And this was precisely what the briefing had implied: advanced aerospace platforms technology that officially did not exist. And I said, "Torres, mark the time and coordinates." "Cade, maintain observation. I am reporting this." And I keyed my radio, stating, "Command, this is Hart. We have visual confirmation of unidentified aerial contact, triangular configuration, massive size, no visible propulsion, moving northeast at estimated Mach 5 plus, and static," crackled in my earpiece. Then an unfamiliar voice responded, "Copy, Hart, maintain position, and observe, do not approach, do not attempt to follow, acknowledge." And I said, "Acknowledged," and the triangle was already disappearing into the darkness, moving faster than anything I had ever witnessed. And within 30 seconds, it had vanished completely, leaving us standing in that desert with more questions than answers. And Cade said quietly, "That was not Russian, and Russians do not have anything that advanced." And Torres added, "Neither do we." And I said, "Officially." And I looked at both of them, stating, "What we saw tonight remains between us. And command nobody else hears about this, not your friends, not your family, nobody, clear?" And they nodded, but I could see the same look in their eyes that I felt in my chest, because we had just witnessed something that changed everything, something that meant decades of official denial about advanced technology. Were lies something that raised one terrifying question: if we have this, what else are they hiding from us? We maintained our patrol for another 6 hours, observing nothing else out of the ordinary. But I could not shake the image of that black triangle from my consciousness, the way it had glided so smoothly and silently, as if it were mocking the very laws of physics and the level of technological advancement required to engineer something like that exceeded anything publicly acknowledged by decades. And when we finally returned to the base as dawn broke, the 2 suited men from Morrison's office were standing there waiting, and they separated us immediately, escorting us to different rooms for individual debriefing sessions. And the man who interrogated me was systematic, asking identical questions in different formulations, searching for any inconsistencies or contradictions in my testimony. And he said, "Describe the shape again," and I responded, "Equilateral triangle, approximately 200 feet per side, possibly larger." And he asked about the propulsion system, and I told him I did not observe one, no visible engines, no exhaust plumes, completely silent. And he pressed for a speed estimate, and I said Mach 5 at minimum, possibly as high as Mach 10, because it traversed 50 miles in under 60 seconds, and he documented everything meticulously, then fixed me with those cold, calculating eyes, and said, "What you witnessed tonight is classified at the absolute highest levels, and this craft is part of a program that has been operational for over 30 years, utilizing technology acquired through means that can never be publicly disclosed. Do you comprehend what I am communicating to you, Lieutenant?" And I comprehended perfectly, because they had constructed this vehicle. Or perhaps they had not constructed it themselves. Perhaps they had discovered it, reverse engineered it, appropriated it from somewhere else, and the ramifications were absolutely staggering. And I said, "I understand, sir." And he said, "Excellent, you will be conducting these patrols 3 nights per week for the foreseeable future. And each time you will document what you observe, and each time those reports will be classified and archived in locations where they will never see the light of day, because you are now part of something that does not officially exist. So welcome to the program." And over the following 6 months, I witnessed that black triangle 37 additional times, sometimes flying solo, sometimes in coordinated formations with other identical craft, and sometimes they would execute maneuvers that defied every principle of physics I had ever learned. 90-degree directional changes at hypersonic velocities, hovering absolutely motionless, then accelerating to Mach 10 within seconds, shooting straight up until they disappeared completely from view. And each sighting was duly reported, and each report vanished into the classified void. And each night I became increasingly convinced of one fundamental truth: that we were being systematically lied to on an enormous scale, not merely about these aircraft, but about everything they represented, the technology, the underlying physics, perhaps even their origins. And Cade and Torres evolved into my inner circle, the only individuals with whom I could discuss what we were witnessing, and we would position ourselves in the desert. During the lull periods, watching the heavens, debating theories we could never articulate anywhere else. And Torres said, "One night I conducted some research," her voice barely audible despite the fact we were miles from any other human presence back in the 1980s. There were documented reports of triangular craft observed over Belgium, thousands of eyewitnesses, radar confirmations, military interceptors scrambled to engage, and the official explanation released to the public was mass hallucination. And Cade interjected, "Except we are observing the identical phenomenon, and we are military personnel stationed at the most highly classified installation in the United States. So either we are collectively hallucinating, or those Belgian sightings were not hallucinations at all." And I said there exists a third possibility, giving voice to the theory that had been crystallizing in my mind. They have possessed this technology since at least the 1980s, perhaps even earlier, which means that while the general public was being informed, we could not manufacture anything faster than the SR-71. We actually possessed craft that made the Blackbird look primitive by comparison. And Torres asked, "But why conceal it?" If we possess technology, this revolutionary, would that not constitute a strategic advantage? Why not demonstrate to our adversaries that we can fly circles around their best aircraft? And Cade said quietly, because of where it originated, if this technology was reverse engineered from something not manufactured by human beings, then admitting we possess it requires admitting the source, and that admission fundamentally changes everything about our understanding of reality. And we sat there in silence, staring up at the stars, and somewhere up in that vast darkness, those black triangles were operating using technology that should not exist, assembled by hands that perhaps were not entirely human, and we were the ones tasked with ensuring nobody discovered the truth, and that covered the period from March through September. And by October, circumstances started to shift dramatically, and the patrol assignments became more frequent, advancing from 4 nights weekly to 5, and the triangles were flying with greater regularity, sometimes in groups of 3 or 4, and they were descending lower close enough that we could distinguish specific details on the hull surface, and the craft were not smooth. When observed from proximity, you could perceive panel lines, access hatches, what appeared to be sensor arrays, and they were clearly built, manufactured, assembled by someone somewhere, and the question remained who and where. And in early November, we received modified orders. Instead of merely observing, we were instructed to establish a security perimeter around specific coordinates, deep within Sector 19, and something significant was happening, something substantial enough that they required boots on the ground to prevent unauthorized observation. And sir, do you know what they are testing out there? Torres asked as we drove toward the coordinates in our Humvee, and I checked the GPS device, and we were heading toward the absolute middle of nowhere, 50 miles from the nearest structure, and I said above my clearance level, but given what we have been observing, I would estimate they are staging a demonstration, and the question is for whose benefit. And we arrived at the designated coordinates at 2100 hours, and the area was demarcated by a perimeter of orange traffic cones, and nothing else existed. There are no structures, no vehicles, just barren desert, and we were supposed to maintain a 2-mile perimeter, keeping it clear. And Cade said, "This is extremely unusual, sir," scanning the horizon through his rifle scope. "There is absolutely nothing here. What exactly are we protecting?" And then we detected it. Not initially with our ears, but with our entire bodies, a profound subsonic vibration that you experienced in your chest cavity, in your skeletal structure, the type of sound that made your teeth ache and caused your vision to blur slightly. And I said, "They are approaching." Look up, and approach they did, because 3 black triangles flying in flawless formation materialized from the western horizon. And this time they were not simply passing overhead, they were descending, coming down directly toward our position, getting closer than they had ever been previously. And at 500 feet altitude, they halted, just stopped, hovering absolutely motionless in the air with no visible means of support, and the subsonic vibration intensified dramatically, and I felt every hair on my arms stand erect from static electrical buildup. And Sir Torres said, her voice trembling, "My equipment is malfunction. Completely everything is registering massive electromagnetic interference," and the 3 craft suspended there for a full 60 seconds, close enough that I could observe every minute detail, and they were beautiful in a deeply unsettling way, perfect geometric constructions that appeared simultaneously ancient and impossibly futuristic, and the red lights positioned at each corner pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat, and then in perfect synchronization, they rotated 45 degrees, and the subsonic hum shifted to a higher frequency, and the atmosphere surrounding the craft began to shimmer like heat distortion. And I realized with mounting horror that we were observing some kind of field, some form of energy distortion enveloping each vehicle. And Cade said, "They are not just hovering," his voice filled with awe, "they are resting on something, some kind of field that is supporting them." And one of the triangles initiated movement, but not like any aircraft I had ever witnessed. It slid sideways, perpendicular to its orientation, without banking or turning, just moved laterally as though it were sliding along invisible rails, and then it shot straight upward, accelerating so rapidly it became merely a blur, and within 2 seconds it had vanished completely from sight, and the other 2 followed, executing the identical impossible maneuver. In one instant they were present, the next they were just streaks heading toward space, leaving us standing in stunned silence. And Torres whispered we should not have witnessed that, and that was not a routine test flight. That was a demonstration of capability. Someone wanted to exhibit what these things can accomplish. And she was absolutely correct. And as I stared at the point where the craft had disappeared, I realized something that chilled my blood, and this was not about national security or protecting secrets from foreign powers. This was about concealing secrets from us, from American citizens, from taxpayers who funded whatever black budget program had produced these machines, and we drove back to base in complete silence, each of us processing what we had just experienced, technology that violated known physics, craft that could maneuver in ways that should be physically impossible, all of it hidden away in the Nevada desert while the world was told such things did not exist. And when we arrived back at Gate 7, those same two suited men were waiting, accompanied by Colonel Morrison, and someone knew, a woman in a dark suit who regarded us like we were problems requiring solutions. And Lieutenant Hart, she said, her voice cold and calculated, you and your team have been granted a temporary clearance upgrade, and you are going to learn certain things tonight that very few people know. And after you learn them, you will comprehend exactly why these secrets must remain buried. And she gestured toward a black SUV, stating, get in, because we are going to the place that officially does not exist. We are going to Area 51. The journey to Area 51 consumed 45 minutes traveling down roads that appeared on no official map. No signage, no markers, just endless desert illuminated by our headlights. And the woman seated in the front had not spoken since we departed Gate 7. She simply stared straight ahead, her face reflected in the window like an apparition, and Cade sat beside me in the rear, his jaw clenched tight. And Torres occupied my other side, her hands gripping her knees so forcefully, her knuckles had turned white. And we all understood we were crossing a threshold tonight, stepping into something from which we could never step back. And ma'am, I finally shattered the silence, can you at least tell us your name? And she glanced at me in the rear view mirror, saying, you can call me Director Shaw, and that is all you need to know. And I asked, what exactly are we about to see? And she said the truth, Lieutenant, whether you are prepared for it or not. And we passed through 3 separate security checkpoints, each one more rigorous than the previous one. Biometric scans, retinal identification, armed guards who examined us like we were potential hostiles. And at the final checkpoint, they confiscated our phones, our watches, anything electronic. And we were going completely dark, totally severed from the outside world. And the base itself materialized suddenly out of the darkness. Not the main Area 51 facility visible in satellite imagery, but something different, a massive underground entrance constructed into the hillside, doors large enough to accommodate a 747, and as we approached, those doors opened soundlessly, revealing a tunnel that descended deep into the earth. And welcome to Groom Lake's secondary site, Shaw announced as we drove into the tunnel, or as we refer to it, Dreamland 2, and this is where the actual work happens. And the tunnel descended at a precipitous angle for what seemed like miles, and emergency lights along the walls created a strobing effect as we passed, making everything feel surreal and dreamlike. And finally we emerged into an enormous underground hangar, and I had seen large hangars before, worked in facilities designed for C-5 Galaxies and B-2 bombers, but this was something else entirely. And the space was so immense I could not see the far wall, just darkness extending beyond the reach of the overhead illumination. And in that darkness I could distinguish shapes, massive shapes, triangular shapes, and holy shit, Cade whispered. And we parked near a prefabricated office building, one of several scattered around the hangar floor, and Shaw led us inside and up to a conference room with windows overlooking the hangar. And from this elevated vantage point I could see the full magnitude of what we had stumbled into. And there were at least 12 black triangles visible, each one in various stages of maintenance, and some had panels removed, exposing internal systems that resembled nothing like conventional aircraft technology, and others were surrounded by diagnostic equipment, computers, cables running to every section of the craft, and the people working on them, dozens of technicians in white clean suits, moved around the vehicles as though they were servicing everyday machinery. And sit down, Shaw said, gesturing to chairs around a conference table, and we sat, and on the table was a thick folder marked with classification stamps I had never seen before, clearance levels that officially did not exist. And Shaw opened the folder and extracted a black and white photograph, saying this photo was taken in 1947. Outside Roswell, New Mexico, and you know the story, weather balloon, mass hysteria, conspiracy theories, all carefully constructed, lies to conceal what actually occurred. And the photo showed wreckage scattered across a desert floor. But this was not aluminum and canvas from a weather balloon, and Debris had that same strange quality as the triangular craft, that sense of being simultaneously ancient and impossibly advanced. And something crashed near Roswell Shaw, continued something not built by human hands, and the military recovered it along with something else. They recovered occupants, and they recovered technology that we have spent the last 70 years attempting to understand and replicate. And Torres leaned forward asking, "You are saying those craft out there, the triangles we have been seeing, they are built using alien technology and reverse engineered?" Shaw corrected, "We did not build them from scratch. We took what we found, studied it, deciphered the principles, and applied them to our own designs." And the TR-3B program started in 1982, and the first successful test flight was in 1989. And by 1994, we had a fully operational fleet. And I looked out at the hangar at those massive black triangles and asked how many people know about this, and Shaw said about the craft maybe 300 people worldwide. About where the technology came from, fewer than 50. And you three are now part of that group, so congratulations. Because your lives just got exponentially more complicated. And Cade stood up and walked to the window saying, "So what, we have been using alien technology for 3 decades while telling the public we do not even believe in UFO, and that is insane, and that is necessary." Shaw said sharply, "Think about what would happen if this got out. Religious chaos as billions of people question their faith, economic collapse as industries realize their technology is obsolete, military panic as every nation demands access to this technology or threatens war to get it. And we are talking about the end of civilization as we know it." And or I said carefully, "People might handle the truth better than you think." And Shaw's laugh was bitter, saying, "You want to test that theory, Lieutenant? Fine, go tell your wife that aliens are real, that the government has been lying for 70 years, and that we have got technology that makes nuclear weapons look like firecrackers," and see how well she sleeps after that conversation. And she had a valid point, because I had been dealing with this knowledge for 6 months, and it was already corroding me. And how would regular people with no military training, security clearance handle this revelation? And let me show you something else, Shaw said, pulling out another folder. "These are incident reports from the past 20 years, and every time one of our TR-3Bs has been seen by civilians, every time someone got a photo or video, every time a pilot reported a close encounter." And the folder was thick, hundreds of pages. "And we have had 237 confirmed sightings by unauthorized personnel," Shaw continued. "And each one had to be managed, witnesses, discredited evidence, confiscated, cover stories created. And it is a full-time job keeping this secret, and it is getting harder every year." And why? Torres asked, "Why is it getting harder?" "And because the technology is advancing faster than we can control it," Shaw said. "The original TR-3B could barely hover, and now we have got versions that can reach orbit, that can travel at Mach 30, that can generate enough power to run a small city. And the more advanced they get, the more frequently they need to be tested, which means more flights, more sightings, more close calls." And she pulled out a tablet and brought up video footage, night vision camera, showing one of the triangles performing maneuvers over the desert. And this was filmed last month by a group of UFO hunters. Shaw said they posted it online, got 2 million views in 48 hours before we could take it down, and we managed to discredit it as CGI, but barely. And the technology is good enough now that people can see the details, can see that these things are real. And so what is the end game? I asked. "You cannot keep this secret forever, and eventually something is going to slip through that you cannot cover up." And Shaw closed the tablet saying, "That is why you are here, Lieutenant, and we need people we can trust on the ground, people who understand what is at stake. And your job is not just observation anymore, and you are going to help us manage incidents when they happen, contain leaks before they spread, make sure this secret stays buried for as long as possible. And if we refuse," Cade asked. "And you will not refuse," Shaw said simply, "because now that you know the truth, you understand why it has to stay hidden. And you have seen what these craft can do, and imagine if that technology fell into the wrong hands. Imagine if terrorists or hostile nations got access to propulsion systems that make conventional weapons obsolete, and the balance of power that has kept the world relatively stable for 70 years would collapse overnight." And she was right, and I hated that she was right, because this secret was too big, too dangerous to reveal, but it was also too big to keep carrying, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, heavier than anything I had experienced in combat. And I need air, Torres said, suddenly standing up. This is too much, I need to think. And Shaw nodded, saying, take a walk, clear your head, just stay in the authorized sections, because there are things down here you are still not cleared to see. And Torres left the room, and Cade and I exchanged looks, because we had been through war together, seen friends die, made impossible decisions under fire. But this was different, and this was a burden that would not end when we rotated home. This was forever. And Sir Cade said quietly, permission to speak freely. And always I said, and I do not think I can do this, keep lying to everyone I know, pretend the world is normal when I know it is not. And that is going to break me eventually. And I understood exactly what he meant, because I had been feeling the same fracture growing inside me, the disconnect between what I knew and what I could say. And we do not have a choice, Riley. I said we signed up for this when we accepted the assignment. But we did not know what we were signing up for. Cade said they deliberately kept us in the dark until it was too late to back out. And Shaw cleared her throat, saying, Sergeant, I understand your frustration, but consider this knowledge is a weapon, and we have armed you with information that could destabilize the world. And that makes you dangerous, yes, but it also makes you essential, and you are now part of the small group that stand between civilization and chaos, and it is a heavy burden, but someone has to carry it. And before Cade could respond, an alarm started blaring throughout the facility, and red lights flashed along the walls, and Shaw's tablet lit up with urgent notifications. And what is happening? I demanded, and Shaw's face had gone pale as she read the screen, saying, we have got an incident. One of the TR-3Bs just went active without authorization, and it is powering up for flight. And which one, I asked, and TR-3B-14 Shaw said the prototype we have been testing with the new propulsion system, and it is supposed to be in maintenance mode, but someone or something just initiated startup sequence, and through the window I saw the hangar explode into activity, and technicians were running away from one of the triangular craft, the one at the far end of the hangar, and its running lights had activated those 3 red circles at each corner, pulsing faster and faster. And can you shut it down remotely? Cade asked. And we are trying, Shaw said, her fingers flying across the tablet, but it is not responding to commands, and it is like the system has been overridden. And the subsonic hum I had felt during our patrol started up so deep it made the windows vibrate, and the TR-3B began to rise slowly off the hangar floor, its electromagnetic field crackling with visible energy. And get everyone out of the hangar, I said, moving toward the door now. And Lieutenant, you are not authorized, Shaw began, but I do not care about authorization. I said that thing is about to tear this facility apart if we do not do something. I ran out of the conference room and down the stairs, Cade right behind me. And the hangar floor was chaos, with technicians scrambling for exits, equipment being abandoned as the TR-3B continued to rise. And it was at 30 feet now, rotating slowly, its propulsion system generating so much electromagnetic interference that the overhead lights were flickering, and their Cade pointed to a catwalk that ran along the wall leading to a control station near the craft. If we can get to that panel, maybe we can manually shut down the power feed. And we sprinted toward the catwalk stairs, and behind us, Shaw was shouting orders into her radio, trying to coordinate an emergency response. But I could tell from her voice that she was losing control of the situation. And the TR-3B was at 50 feet now, still rising toward the hangar ceiling. And I could see the underside clearly from this angle, see the strange hexagonal patterns that covered its surface, see the way space itself seemed to bend around the craft. And we reached the control panel, and Cade started working the interface, while I watched the craft trying to predict what it would do next. And the subsonic hum was so intense now that my vision was blurring, my inner ear sending confused signals about which way was up, and I cannot access the emergency shutoff. Cade said, his voice tight with frustration, it is locked out, and someone with high-level clearance deliberately disabled the safety systems and sabotage. I said, worse, what if this thing is responding to the original technology? And what if there is something in its system, some kind of alien programming that we never fully understood? And the TR-3B stopped rising at 80 feet just below the ceiling. And for a moment, everything went silent, and the hum cut off, and the electromagnetic crackle ceased. And it just hung there perfectly still, like it was waiting for something. And then every light in the facility went out. And in the absolute darkness, I heard Torres's voice over my radio saying, sir, you need to see this. I am in the east observation deck, and there is something happening outside. And I said, Torres, get to a safe location. And she said, "Sir, there are more of them. 3 more TR-3Bs just appeared outside the facility, and they are not ours, and I am looking at the registration codes, and they do not match any vehicle in our database." And my blood ran cold, and I said, "Shaw, are you hearing this?" And copy came her voice through the darkness. "All personnel, evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. Unknown craft have entered our airspace. Defensive protocols are." And the transmission cut off, and emergency lighting kicked on, bathing everything in red. And through the hangar's open entrance tunnel, I could see them, 3 black triangles larger than any TR-3B I'd seen hovering just outside the facility, and they were not alone. And as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw something else beyond the entrance. Shapes in the sky, dozens of them, all triangular, all silent, and some were ours, the TR-3Bs we had built using stolen technology. But others, the ones hanging at higher altitude, those were different. And those were original. And Cade, I said quietly, "I do not think we reverse engineered this technology. I think they let us copy it. And now they are here to take it back." And the TR-3B hanging inside the hangar began to move toward the entrance, gliding smoothly like it was being pulled by invisible strings. And as it passed beneath us, I saw something that made my stomach drop, and the access panels we had seen open earlier, the ones exposing the internal systems, they were sealing themselves, and the craft was repairing itself, reconfiguring like it was alive. "And this is not good," Cade said, backing away from the railing. "Sir, we need to get out of here. And whatever is happening, we do not want to be in this facility when it goes down." And he was right. But as I turned to follow him, I saw Shaw emerge from the stairwell, her face illuminated by the red emergency lights. And behind her were 4 soldiers in full tactical gear, weapons drawn, and Lieutenant Hart. She said, her voice cold and official, "You and your team are not authorized to leave this facility, and what you have seen tonight cannot be allowed to spread beyond these walls. And you are locking us in." I could not believe what I was hearing. "There are unknown craft outside. One of your prototypes just went rogue, and you are worried about us, and I am worried about maintaining the secret." Shaw said, "That is my job, and your job is to stay here until we determine how much damage has been done." And the soldiers moved to block our path, and I looked at Cade, saw the same calculation running through his mind, and we were outnumbered, outgunned, and deep underground in a facility that was potentially under attack by technology we did not understand. And outside, through the hangar entrance, the sky was filling with more triangular craft. And the ones I was sure were not ours, the original technology, were descending slowly toward the base. And as they came lower, I realized with horror what was about to happen. And they were not attacking, they were landing, coming down to reclaim what we had stolen 70 years ago. And anyone who knew about it, anyone who had seen too much, was going to become a problem that needed to be solved. And Torres, I said into my radio, keeping my voice low, "Where are you?" "An east observation deck." She said, "Sir, I found something you need to see. There is a secondary exit here, an emergency tunnel, and it is not on the facility map Shaw showed us. And can you get to it without being spotted?" I asked. "And already there, sir," she said, "waiting for you." And I looked at Shaw and her soldiers, and they were focused on me, and Cade making sure we did not try to run, and they had not heard Torres's transmission, and maybe we still had a chance. And Director Shaw, I said, straightening up, "You are right. We should stay here and wait for orders. Sergeant, Cade and I will cooperate fully." And she studied my face, looking for deception. "And smart choice, Lieutenant." She said, "I would hate to have to mark you as casualties of an equipment malfunction." And there it was, the threat laid bare. And if we became inconvenient, we would simply disappear, listed as killed in a training accident or some other cover story. "And just one thing," I said, "that craft outside, the ones that are not ours, what are they?" And Shaw's expression did not change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes, fear. "And that is above your clearance level, Lieutenant," she said. "And we are about to die down here, are not we?" I said, "You can at least tell us the truth about what is killing us." And she was quiet for a long moment, then sighed, saying, "We always knew this day might come. We stole their technology-built copies, convinced ourselves we had gotten away with it. But they have been watching, waiting, and now they have decided to remind us who this technology actually belongs to." "And so what do we do?" I asked. "And we do what we have always done," Shaw said. "We try to survive, and we keep the secret even if it kills us." And through the hangar entrance, the first of the unknown craft touched down, and as it settled onto the desert floor, a door opened in its side, and something emerged, something that walked on 2 legs, but was not quite human. And in that moment, I understood that everything we had been told about Roswell, about reverse engineering, about being alone in the universe, was about to be proven catastrophically wrong. And I did not wait to see what came out of that craft and Cade move. I said, and we bolted toward the east observation deck, Shaw's shouts echoing behind us, and the soldiers started to pursue, but then something happened that stopped everyone in their tracks, and every TR-3B in the hangar, all 12 of them, activated simultaneously, and their running lights blazed to life, and that subsonic hum became a roar that shook the entire facility. And they are taking them back, Cade said as we ran. They are reclaiming their technology, and we reached the east observation deck and found Torres waiting by what looked like a standard wall panel, and she had already pried it open, revealing a narrow tunnel that sloped upward into darkness. An emergency escape route, she said, pulling out a flashlight built in the 1960s during the Cold War. And according to the maintenance logs I found, it has not been used in 40 years, and might be our only way out. And might be, I asked, and sir, the eggs? It is 3 miles from here, she said, and I have no idea what condition it is in, but staying here is definitely death. So I am taking my chances with my beat. And the sound of boots on metal grating told us Shaw's soldiers were getting closer, and behind them, I could hear screaming as something went catastrophically wrong in the main hangar, and the facility's alarm system had evolved from a steady blare to a pulsing shriek that meant total evacuation. And go, I said, pushing Torres into the tunnel, and Cade followed, and I squeezed in after them, pulling the panel shut behind us. And the tunnel was barely wide enough for one person to move through in a crouch, and the air was stale and thick with dust that had been settling for decades, and our flashlight created bouncing shadows on the concrete walls, making everything feel even more claustrophobic. And Sir Torres said from the front, I need you to know something. Before we left the observation deck, I downloaded files from their system, and everything about the TR-3B program, the Roswell incident cover-ups, it is all on this drive. And she held up a small thumb drive in the dim light of her flashlight, and that little piece of plastic looked both insignificant and impossibly important. And that is treason, Cade said quietly. They will hunt us for the rest of our lives for that, and they were going to kill us anyway. Torres replied, at least this way, the truth does not die with us. And she was right, but the weight of what she had done hit me like a physical force. And we were not just running for our lives anymore, we were carrying evidence that could expose the biggest secret in human history, and that made us the most dangerous people on Earth. And behind us, muffled through the tunnel walls, I heard explosions, and the facility was tearing itself apart. And whatever those beings wanted with their technology, they were taking it back forcefully, and we crawled for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. And the tunnel gradually inclined upward, taking us toward the surface, and my knees were screaming, my back was on fire, but I kept moving because stopping meant dying. And there is a door ahead, Torres called back, sealed shut, give me a minute. And while she worked on the door, I looked back the way we had come, and through the darkness I could see a faint red glow, and the facility was burning, or maybe something worse, and the air in the tunnel was getting warmer, pushing us forward like a breath from hell itself. And got it, Torres yanked the door open, and fresh night air rushed into the tunnel, and we scrambled out into the Nevada desert, emerging from a concrete bunker that was nearly invisible, hidden among rocks and scrub brush. And the sky above us was full of lights, dozens of triangular craft, both the TR-3Bs we had built and the larger, more advanced original craft circling the area like vultures. And as we watched, 3 of them descended toward where the underground facility must be, and the ground shook with each landing. And they are dismantling it, Cade said, taking back every piece of technology we stole. And we need to move, I said, get as far from here as possible before someone realizes we made it out. We started walking north, using the stars to navigate, and without vehicles or supplies, we were looking at a brutal hike through the desert. But staying meant being found, and being found meant disappearing into a black site, even more secret than the one we just escaped. And after an hour of walking, Torres stopped suddenly, saying, sir, listen, and I heard it, a vehicle approaching from the south, and headlights appeared on the horizon, bouncing over the rough terrain, and we dove behind a cluster of rocks and waited. And the vehicle was a Humvee, military markings barely visible in the darkness, and it stopped about 50 yards from our position, and someone got out, and in the red glow of the tail lights I recognized the figure, Colonel Morrison and Lieutenant Hart. He called out, I know you are out here, I tracked your escape route, please, we need to talk. And it could be a trap, probably was a trap. Something in his voice made me hesitate, and he sounded tired, defeated, nothing like the commanding officer who had briefed me months ago. And stay here, I told Cade and Torres, if this goes wrong you run north and do not look back. And I stood up and walked toward Morrison, hands visible, making no aggressive moves, and as I got closer, I saw how much he had aged in just the past few hours, and his face was gray, his uniform disheveled. "And sir," I said carefully, "what do you want? And to warn you," he said, "Shaw did not make it out, neither did most of the personnel in that facility, and whatever came down there, it did not just take the technology, it took everyone who had worked on the program, everyone who knew too much, and but not you," I said. And I was at the main Groom Lake facility when it happened. He said they only hit Dreamland 2 surgical strike, no collateral damage to anything except people and technology directly related to the TR-3B program, and I looked up at the triangular craft still circling overhead and asked, "What do they want?" And I think they are sending a message. Morrison said we stole from them, reverse engineered their technology without permission, and now they are taking it back and eliminating anyone who could recreate it. And he paused, adding, "But you 3 got out, which makes you loose ends. And so you are here to eliminate us?" I asked. And no, Morrison shook his head slowly. "I am here to help you disappear in about 2 hours. This entire incident will be classified at a level above top secret, and official story will be a gas leak and fire at a testing facility. All casualties will be explained away. But you 3, if you try to come back to base, if you try to resume your lives, you will be disappeared within 24 hours. And why are you helping us?" I asked. "And because I am tired of the lies, Lieutenant," he said, looking at me with eyes that had seen too much. "I have spent 30 years keeping secrets that are eating our species alive. We made contact with non-human intelligence 70 years ago, and instead of preparing humanity for that reality, we chose deception. We chose to steal their technology, build weapons from it, and pretend we were still alone in the universe." And he pulled out a set of keys and tossed them to me, saying, "There is a safe house in Rachel, Nevada, small town full of UFO enthusiasts, and ironically the safest place for you. Right now nobody pays attention to people talking about aliens. There, the address is in the glove box, along with cash and new identities. Use them, disappear. And if you are smart, you will destroy whatever evidence you took from that facility and never speak of this again. And if we do not," I asked, "if we decide the truth matters more than our safety," and Morrison smiled sadly, saying, "then you will join the long list of people who tried to expose this secret and wound up dead or discredited. The system is too big, too entrenched. You cannot fight it alone. And maybe not," I said, "but maybe we do not have to fight it. Maybe we just need to plant seeds of truth and let them grow." And he studied me for a long moment, then nodded, saying, "Your choice, Lieutenant, but choose carefully. Once you go down that road, there is no coming back." And Morrison climbed back into his Humvee and drove away, heading south toward the base, and I watched his tail lights disappear, then waved for Cade and Taurus to join me. And he gave us an out, I explained, showing them the keys, new identities, safe house, a chance to disappear and live normal lives. And but Taurus asked, but we have evidence that could change everything." I said, "The question is, do we use it or bury it?" And Cade looked up at the triangular craft still circling overhead, saying, "Sir, I have been thinking about something. We always assumed that crash at Roswell was an accident. But what if it was not? What if they wanted us to find it, wanted us to reverse engineer their technology? And why would they do that?" Taurus asked. "And because we needed to reach a certain level of advancement before they could make open contact," Cade said. "Think about it. In 1947, we had just split the atom, just proven we could harness nuclear power. Maybe that was the threshold. Maybe they crashed on purpose, left us breadcrumbs to follow, knowing we would eventually figure it out. And it was a wild theory, but looking at the precision with which these beings had executed tonight's operation, it made a disturbing kind of sense. And they had not attacked us. They had simply taken back what was theirs and eliminated the specific people who had abused it. And so what now?" I asked my team. "We can take Morrison's offer, disappear, live quiet lives, maybe start families, grow old pretending tonight never happened, or we can try to release this information knowing it will paint targets on our backs for the rest of our lives." And Taurus held up the thumb drive, saying, "This is bigger than us, sir, bigger than our safety or our futures. Humanity deserves to know we are not alone, that we have been lied to for generations, that there is technology that could change everything. But it has been kept secret to maintain power structures, and they will kill us for this." Cade said, "You know that, right? We will not last a month if we go public, and maybe," I said, "but maybe some truths are worth dying for." And we stood there in the Nevada desert, 3 soldiers who had stumbled into something so big it defied comprehension, and above us the triangular craft were beginning to disperse, heading back to wherever they came from, and their mission was complete. They had made their point. "And let us vote," I said, "disappear and stay safe, or release the truth." and accept the consequences, Cade. And he was quiet for a long moment, staring at the stars, saying, "My whole life, I have wondered if we are alone out here, if there is something more than just us now. I know in keeping that secret feels like a betrayal of everyone who has ever looked up at the night sky and asked that question." And he looked at me, adding, "I vote we release it." And Torres said, "I did not download those files to bury them, sir. I vote release." And I looked at the thumb drive in Torres's hand, thought about my wife, my daughter, the normal life I had left behind to serve my country, and releasing this information meant that life was over. It meant becoming a fugitive living in fear, maybe dying for a truth that most people would not even believe. But it also meant that all the lies, all the cover-ups, all the people who died keeping this secret, it would all finally mean something, and we would give humanity a choice to face the truth instead of living in comfortable ignorance. And then we are agreed. I said we release everything, but we do it smart, multiple platforms, simultaneously spread it so wide they cannot contain it all. And then we go deep underground until the storm passes, and we drove to Rachel and Morrison's Humvee, a tiny town of 50 people who had built their entire identity around Area 51 and alien conspiracy theories, and the irony was not lost on any of us, and we were hiding the biggest alien secret in history in a town full of people who believed in aliens but would probably dismiss our evidence as just another hoax. And the safe house was a small trailer at the edge of town stocked with supplies and equipment. And over the next 72 hours we worked around the clock, and Torres uploaded the files to multiple secure servers, set up dead man switches that would release everything if we were captured or killed, and we wrote accompanying testimony, created verification systems to prove the files were not manipulated. And on the fourth day we pushed the button, and the files went live on 50 different platforms simultaneously, WikiLeaks, news organizations, social media, everywhere we could think of. And then we waited, and the response was immediate and exactly what we expected. And the files got massive attention for about 48 hours, and millions of people downloaded them, analyzed them, debated their authenticity, and news organizations ran stories, government officials issued denials, and then the discrediting began, and expert analysts declared the files were sophisticated fakes. And our military records were released showing Torres had been treated for mental health issues, that Cade had a history of substance abuse, that I had been reprimanded for insubordination. And all lies, but effective lies, character assassination designed to make us unreliable witnesses. And within a week, the story had been relegated to conspiracy theory websites. And within a month, it was a punchline, just another Area 51 hoax, and the files were still out there, still available. Nobody took them seriously anymore, and we had failed, or so it seemed. But then something interesting started happening, and scientists began independently verifying aspects of the technology described in the files, and engineers started building prototypes based on the principles we had revealed. And the information was spreading not through official channels, but through the underground network of researchers who had always suspected the truth. And 6 months after we released the files, a private aerospace company announced a breakthrough in electromagnetic propulsion. And the design looked suspiciously similar to the TR-3B schematics, and they claimed to have developed it independently, but I knew better. They had used our files, and 8 months later, a university physics department published a paper on gravity manipulation that cited anonymous sources describing technology allegedly observed at classified facilities, and the paper was controversial, but could not be entirely dismissed. And the truth was getting out, not all at once in a dramatic revelation, but slowly, steadily, like water, seeping through cracks in a dam, and dams that spring leaks eventually break. We have been in hiding for 8 years now, moving every few months using different identities, always watching for signs that we have been found, and there have been close calls, and Torres disappeared for 3 days last year, before resurfacing with a story about being detained and questioned by men who showed no badges, and Cade was in a car accident that the police ruled as mechanical failure, but the brake lines looked cut to me, and they are still hunting us, still trying to put the genie back in the bottle. But it is too late, and the information is out there, spreading, growing, evolving into something they cannot control. And my daughter is 16 now, and I have not seen her since the night we escaped that facility, and she thinks I am dead, killed in a training accident. And it is better that way, safer for her, but sometimes I imagine what I will tell her if we ever meet again, and how You explain to your child that you abandoned her to expose a truth about alien technology and government cover-ups, and maybe she will understand, maybe she will hate me, and either way I had to make a choice between being her father and being someone who tried to change the world, and I chose the world, and I hope that was the right call, and last month something happened that gives me hope. We made the right decision, and a major news network ran a primetime special on UFO and government secrecy. And they interviewed former intelligence officials who admitted that non-human technology had been recovered and studied, and they did not mention the TR-3B program specifically, but they came closer to the truth than anything mainstream media has ever done, and the walls are cracking, and the secret is leaking, and eventually, maybe in my lifetime, maybe after I am gone, the truth will come out fully, and humanity will learn that we are not alone, that we have never been alone, and that the beings we share this universe with have technology and knowledge that makes our greatest achievements look primitive. And when that day comes, I hope we are ready, and I hope we have grown enough as a species to handle the revelation with wisdom instead of fear. And I hope we can look up at those triangular craft and see them not as threats, but as teachers showing us what is possible when you do not limit yourself to primitive thinking. But I am not optimistic, and I have seen how we handle unknown, and we steal from it, weaponize it, hide it away in secret facilities, and convince ourselves we are in control, and that is not wisdom, that is fear pretending to be strength. And so I am telling you this story, putting it out there one more time, adding my voice to the growing chorus of people who have seen the truth and refuse to stay silent, and maybe you will believe me, maybe you will dismiss this as another crazy conspiracy theory. And either way, the truth remains, and there are things flying in our skies that should not exist according to our understanding of physics, and those things were built using technology we did not develop on our own, and the beings who created that technology are still out there watching us, waiting to see if we will mature enough to join them as equals or destroy ourselves trying to steal what we have not earned. And I have spent 8 years running, hiding, living in fear, but I do not regret the choice we made that night in the Nevada desert. And someone had to tell the truth, someone had to break the silence. And the cost has been higher than I ever imagined, but some truths are worth any price. And my name is Captain Rebel, and I was lieutenant in the United States Army, and I saw things at Area 51 that officially do not exist, and I stole classified information and released it to the world, and I am still alive to tell this story, which means they have not won yet. And the secret they hide in Nevada skies is not just about technology or aliens, it is about power, about control, about a small group of people deciding that humanity is not ready for the truth. But readiness is not something you wait, for it is something you create by facing reality, however terrifying that reality might be, and look up at the night sky tonight. Really look, and somewhere up there in the darkness between the stars, there are things flying that prove we are not alone, and somewhere in Nevada, hidden in underground facilities we will never see, there are people still keeping secrets that could change everything, and the question is, how long can those secrets last? How much longer can they maintain the lie? And not much longer, because the cracks are spreading, and the truth is leaking, and one day soon, maybe sooner than anyone expects, the dam will break completely. And when that happens, remember this story, remember that some people tried to warn you, remember that the truth was there all along, hidden in plain sight, waiting for humanity to be brave enough to see it. And if you see a black triangle in the sky moving in ways that defy physics, do not look away, do not dismiss it, do not let them convince you it is not real, because it is real. It has always been real, and the truth will not stay hidden forever. And I think about that night constantly, the night everything changed, when we stood in the desert watching technology that should not exist performing maneuvers that violated every law of physics we thought we understood, and I replay those moments in my mind, the subsonic hum that made my bones vibrate, the way the craft seemed to warp space around them, the feeling of being utterly insignificant in the face of something so far beyond our comprehension. And sometimes late at night, when I cannot sleep, I wonder what would have happened if we had made different choices, and what if we had stayed silent, taken Morrison's offer, disappeared into comfortable obscurity. And would the truth have stayed buried forever, or would someone else have come forward? And I will never know, but what I do know is that living with consequences of speaking out is easier than living with the guilt of staying silent. Would have been, and Cade and Taurus feel the same way, and we talk about it sometimes during our encrypted calls, always careful, always paranoid, but still needing that connection to the only other people who truly understand what we have been through. And Torres is working on a new project, now collecting testimonies from other whistleblowers, people who have seen things they should not have seen, and building a database of evidence that corroborates our story. And Cade has been in contact with scientists who are trying to replicate the propulsion systems described in our files, and they are making progress, slow progress, but progress nonetheless. And the technology is real, and it works, and eventually someone is going to build a working prototype. And when they do, the whole house of cards collapses, because you cannot explain away a functioning anti-gravity device as swamp gas or weather balloons. And I have been documenting everything, writing down every detail I can remember before time erodes my memories. And this account you are reading now is part of that effort, and I want there to be a record, a clear, unambiguous testimony from someone who was there, who saw it firsthand, who knows the truth. And maybe this document will be dismissed like all the others. Maybe it will disappear into the vast ocean of conspiracy theories and fringe claims that flood the internet. But maybe, just maybe, it will reach someone who matters, someone with the platform or the resources or the courage to push the investigation further. And that is all I can hope for at this point. And I made my choice 8 years ago, and I accepted the consequences, and now I live with them every day. And the isolation, the paranoia, constant fear of being found, and it wears on you in ways I never anticipated. And there are days when I wonder if it was worth it, days when I see a photo of my daughter who does not know I am alive, and the pain is so intense I can barely breathe. But then I remember what we saw that night, and I remember the lies, and I remember that humanity deserves better than to be kept in the dark about the most important discovery in human history. And that knowledge keeps me going. And 3 weeks ago something happened that reminded me why we did this, and I was in a diner in some small town I cannot name, and there was a kid, maybe 12 years old, reading a book about space exploration, and his eyes were full of wonder, full of questions about what is out there beyond our little planet. And I wanted to walk over and tell him that his questions have answers, that we are not alone, that there are beings out there with technology that makes our spacecraft look like toys. But I could not, and the secret still keeps me silent in moments like that. But I take comfort in knowing that someday, maybe, when that kid is older, maybe, when he is the one making decisions about what truths to reveal and what lies to maintain, he will have access to the evidence we released, and he will be able to make his own choices based on facts instead of propaganda. And that is the long game we are playing now, and we are not trying to force the truth on an unwilling public anymore, and we are just making sure that information is available for those who want to find it, and planting seeds that will grow in their own time. And the truth has a way of emerging eventually, and lies require constant energy to maintain, but truth just sits there waiting patiently for someone to notice it. And I have faith that eventually enough people will notice, and enough people will ask questions, and enough people will demand answers, and the whole rotten structure of secrecy will collapse under its own weight. And when that day comes, I hope I am still alive to see it. And I hope my daughter will understand why I made the choices I made, and I hope humanity will be ready to take its place among the civilizations that traverse the stars. But even if none of that happens, even if I die in obscurity, and the secret stays buried for another 70 years, and even if my daughter never knows the truth about what happened to her father, I will still believe we made the right choice, because some truths are bigger than individual lives, and some secrets are too important to keep, and the knowledge that we are not alone in the universe, that we have been visited by intelligences far beyond our own, that we have access to technology that could transform our civilization, and that this information has been deliberately withheld from the public for generations, that truth is worth fighting for, and it is worth dying for, and it is worth sacrificing everything I held dear. And I am Captain Rebel, and this is my testimony, and I swear on everything I hold sacred that every word of it is true. And the black triangles are real, and the cover-up is real, and the truth is out there waiting for humanity to be brave enough to embrace it. The weight of carrying this knowledge for 8 years has changed me in ways I could never have anticipated, and I am not the same person who accepted that assignment back in 2015. And that version of myself believed in the system, trusted that the people in charge were making decisions for the greater good. And now I know better, and I know that the greatest threat to humanity is not external forces, but our own willingness to accept comfortable lies over difficult truths. And every day, I wake up in a different place using a different name, looking over my shoulder, wondering if today is the day they finally catch up with us. And it is exhausting, but it is also clarifying, because when you strip away all the normal concerns of everyday life, career advancement, social status, material possessions, what you are left with is the pure essential question of what matters. And what matters is truth, and what matters is giving humanity the information it needs to make informed decisions about its future. And what matters is refusing to let a small group of people control the narrative about the most important discovery in human history. And I think about the people who died in that facility, the technicians and scientists and security personnel who were just doing their jobs and had no idea they were working with stolen technology that would eventually get them killed. And Shaw is dead. Morrison might be dead for all I know, and dozens of others whose names I never knew, all of them casualties of a secret that grew too big to contain. And their deaths weigh on me, because if we had moved faster, if we had been smarter, if we had found a way to expose the truth without triggering that response, maybe they would still be alive. But I also know that is not rational thinking, and we did not cause that attack, and the beings who created that technology came to reclaim what was theirs, and they eliminated the people who had abused it. And that is on the people who made the decision to steal alien technology in the first place, not on 3 soldiers who tried to tell the truth about it. And still the guilt remains, and still I wonder if there was a better way, and Torres struggles with it too. And she has nightmares about the people we left behind, and Cade drinks more than he should, trying to numb the memories. And we are all damaged in our own ways, all carrying scars that will never fully heal, but we are alive and we are free, and we still have the ability to fight for what we believe in, and that is more than most people get. And the landscape of disclosure has changed dramatically in the 8 years since we released those files, and when we first went public. Official position was complete denial. UFO do not exist. Alien technology is science fiction. Anyone who claims otherwise is delusional. But now the government has admitted that unidentified aerial phenomena are real, and that some of them demonstrate technology beyond our current capabilities. And military pilots are coming forward with their own encounters, and former intelligence officials are testifying before Congress, and the walls are crumbling slowly but undeniably. And I do not think our files alone caused this shift, but I believe we were part of a larger movement and a growing wave of people who decided that the truth matters more than institutional secrecy, and every whistleblower who comes forward makes it easier for the next one, and every piece of evidence that enters the public domain makes it harder to maintain the lie, and eventually the dam breaks. And I think we are close to that point now, and there are members of Congress demanding answers, asking the right questions, pushing for transparency, and there are scientists willing to risk their reputations by studying phenomena that were previously taboo, and there are journalists investigating stories that would have been career suicide a decade ago. And the momentum is building, and something is going to give, and when it does, when the full truth finally comes out, it is going to be messy and chaotic and terrifying for a lot of people, and there will be religious upheaval as billions of people grapple with the realization that we are not the center of creation, and there will be economic disruption as existing power structures crumble. And there will be political chaos as governments that have been lying for decades try to maintain legitimacy. And I am not naive enough to think disclosure will be some beautiful moment of unity and enlightenment, and it is going to be ugly and difficult. And it is going to test us as a species, but it is also necessary, because the alternative is continuing to live in ignorance, and that is no longer acceptable. And we have reached a point in our technological development where we need to understand the full scope of what is possible. And we need access to technologies that could solve our energy crisis, our environmental problems, our limitations in space exploration, and keeping that knowledge locked away in classified programs, serving the interests of a tiny elite while the rest of humanity struggles. That is not just wrong, it is criminal. And I have seen what that technology can do, and I have seen craft that can travel at speeds that make our fastest jets look stationary. And I have seen propulsion systems that generate no exhaust, produce no pollution, operate with an efficiency that makes our current technology look primitive. And that technology exists right now, and it has existed for decades. And while we burn fossil fuels and poison our atmosphere and fight wars over resources, the solutions to those problems sit in underground facilities guarded by men with guns and NDA, and that is what keeps me going when the paranoia gets too intense, when the isolation becomes unbearable, when I miss my daughter so much it feels like my chest is being crushed. And I remind myself that this is bigger than me, bigger than my personal suffering, and this is about the future of our species, and whether we will be honest enough with ourselves to handle the truth. And I believe we can, and I believe we will. And I believe that when the full story finally comes out, when all the classified files are declassified, when all the witnesses come forward, when the physical evidence is examined by independent scientists, humanity will surprise itself with its resilience, and yes, there will be chaos, and yes, there will be fear, but there will also be wonder and excitement and a renewed sense of purpose, because we will finally understand our place in the cosmos, and we will finally have access to knowledge that can transform our civilization. And I want to be alive to see that day, and I want my daughter to see it, and I want her to understand that her father was not a traitor or a conspiracy theorist or a delusional veteran, but someone who saw an injustice and tried to correct it, someone who believed that truth matters even when telling it costs everything. And maybe she will forgive me. Maybe she will not, but at least she will know. And at least she will have access to the evidence, and she can make her own judgments. And that is all any of us can ask, for the freedom to examine the evidence and draw our own conclusions. And for too long that freedom has been denied to us, and for too long a small group of people have decided what we are allowed to know and what must remain hidden, and that era is ending, and I can feel it in way the conversation has shifted, in the way mainstream outlets are covering topics that used to be relegated to fringe websites. And I can see it in the way younger generations approach these questions with curiosity instead of cynicism. And I can hear it in the testimonies of credible witnesses are no longer afraid to speak out, and the truth is coming, and it cannot be stopped, and it can only be delayed. And every day that passes, more evidence accumulates, more witnesses come forward, more scientists publish research that challenges the official narrative, and the foundation of the lie becomes weaker, and one day soon it will collapse completely. And when it does, I hope people remember the ones who spoke out when it was dangerous to do so. And I hope they remember that truth did not come easily, that people sacrificed careers, families, safety, and in some cases their lives to bring it into light. And I hope they honor that sacrifice by demanding transparency going forward, by refusing to accept official denials, by insisting on evidence and accountability, and by never again allowing a small group to control knowledge that belongs to all of humanity. And that is my hope, and that is my prayer, and that is why I continue to tell this story, even though telling it puts me at risk, even though every time I speak out, I make it easier for them to find me. And I tell it because silence is complicity, and I tell it because the next generation deserves better than we got, and I tell it because somewhere out there is a kid looking up at the stars asking the same questions I asked when I was young, and that kid deserves honest answers. And so I will keep talking, and I will keep writing, and I will keep adding my testimony to the growing mountain of evidence until either they silence me permanently or the truth becomes so obvious that denial is no longer possible. And I think we are closer to that second outcome than most people realize. And I think the next few years will bring revelations that will change everything. And I think humanity is ready for it, or at least as ready as we will ever be. And I think the beings who created that technology, the ones who came back to reclaim it that night in Nevada, I think they are waiting too. And I think they are watching to see if we have learned anything, if we have matured enough to handle contact, if we are ready to join the larger community of intelligent species that populate this universe. And I do not know if we are ready, but I know we will never be ready if we keep lying to ourselves. And I know that facing the truth, however difficult, is the only path forward. And so here I am 8 years later, still running, still hiding, still fighting, and my name is Captain Rebel, and I was a lieutenant in the United States Army, and I guarded Area 51 for 8 months until I discovered the TR-3B black triangles are not human, and everything I have told you is true, and the craft are real, and the cover-up is real, and contact is real, and the technology that could transform our world exists, and it has been hidden from you. And it has been weaponized and controlled and kept secret by people who believe you cannot handle the truth. But I believe you can, and I believe you deserve the chance to decide for yourself. And so I am giving you this testimony, this account, this evidence, and what you do with it is up to you. and you can dismiss it as another conspiracy theory, and you can file it away with all the other claims, and you can go back to your comfortable ignorance, or you can look up at the night sky and ask yourself, what if? And you can start asking questions, and you can start demanding answers, and you can start holding the people in power accountable for the lies they have told and the truth they have hidden, and that choice is yours, and I have made mine, and I will live with the consequences, and I will die with the consequences if necessary, but I will not stay silent, and I will not let them erase what I saw, and I will not let them convince you that the biggest secret in human history is just a myth, because it is not a myth, and it is real, and it is happening, and it is time for all of us to wake up and face it. If this story shook you, then share it, because the truth spreads when we refuse to stay silent. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because there are more secrets they do not want you to know, and I am not done talking. The question is not whether you believe me, but whether you are brave enough to look up and ask what else they are hiding.